Yeah, and star.
And star. Okay, cool. This sample size is much smaller than those exoplanets found by transits and RV. But that means like each planet in this sample is really observational treasure. So finding these planets is the first step to study these systems. And in order to like further understand how they form and their specific properties, we need spectroscopy. So here at the bottom right, I'm showing a James Webb spectrum of a planet, VHS 1256b. So this spectrum is an emission spectrum. It's really beautiful. That spans a wide range in wavelengths from 0.8 to 20 micron that has been not observed before. So we see a lot of structures in the spectrum given this kind of moderate resolution, and all of these kind of structures basically tell the stories about the planet. So my interest is basically to study these wiggles and understand their compositions. So why the composition matter? Because they are, based on the theory, they are linked to the natural environment of these planets. So it's expected to see a series of thin lines of different molecules in the protoplanetary disks, including like water, CO2, and CO. And therefore, based on this pioneering work led by Karen Oberg, we will expect to see like the abundance or C/O ratio, for example, is a function of the orbital distances within the disk, and they are different between gas and ice. And we can see these kind of jumps along the snow lines. But I have to also mention that this is a kind of a simplified scenario, and there are some more complexities behind this kind of picture. One of that is like that this is not static, which is assumption here. So basically, like there are some chemical evolution within the disk that can make this kind of picture more complex. And also another thing is like the C/O ratio measured from the planets are not necessarily their bulk composition, especially because like the planets have clouds which can sequester the oxygen and make them unobservable and change the ratio. And also their vertical mixing. And in addition, the things like the models can have systematic errors. So that means our measured C/O is not necessarily true. So we want to really quantify the systematic errors of the models. And finally, the things like we have to care about the stellar abundance, and instead of assuming all of the stars are solar type. So motivated by this kind of complexities, I'm now leading a program which aims to measure the elemental abundances for image planets and brown dwarfs, and also all of their host stars. So this is a program with a short name as ELPIS. So the scope of the ELPIS is basically to, it's pretty straightforward. Like the first, we measure the elemental abundances from the host stars based on the high resolution spectroscopy. And then in the meanwhile, we measure the composition of the planets and brown dwarfs based on their spectra using retrievals and Fourier models, combine these different tools. And finally, we want to compare the composition between the planets and the stars as a function of the orbital distances, and also as a function of planet masses. And in order to see like if there are any kind of population level trends in the formation for the image planets. So the role of the benchmark brown dwarfs here is like they will help us to quantify the systematic errors of the models. So for today, I would like to basically showcase one system to demonstrate how our analysis work. So this is a recently discovered planetary system, AF Lab A plus B. So the planet here is remarkable because it has a directly measured mass around 3 Jupiter mass. And this mass is basically the lowest, or to be safe, among the lowest image planets found so far. And the system was found independently by 3 different groups back in February this year. The host star is young, 24 million years, and there's a debris disk at 50 AU. So in order to understand the properties of the system, I would really like to highlight the value of the holistic perspective about both stars and planets. So the first step here is to study the stellar abundance. So we have acquired high resolution spectroscopy for the host star for all of the kind of stars of image planets and benchmark brown dwarfs. And this is an example spectrum that we observe from this program. So we're using the 2.7 meter telescope at McDonald Observatory. So we have been using the standard excitation ionization balance techniques to study the abundances of different elements as shown by the dark patches in the figure, and then combining the spectral analysis with the stellar isochrones to derive a list of the stellar parameters. So our goal is to produce kind of properties for all of the host stars in a uniform way and create a catalog for these stars. So now the planet, first of that is like we study the spectrophotometry using models to derive their composition. But before we go to the spectral analysis side, I would also like to mention some two independent observations we have to care about. One of that is orbit. So as I mentioned, like there are 3 discovery papers for the same system, and they have observed the system, like they obtained the relative astrometry using different instruments at different epochs. So in our recent work, we are combining all of the available relative astrometry plus the whole star's relative RV and also the Hipparcos Gaia acceleration. And in this way, like we are kind of refining the orbit of the system, and we are also refining the planet mass. So now we find that the planet mass is 2.8 Jupiter mass. In addition to the orbit, we also use the evolution models. So evolution models basically contextualize the planet's properties, given that the planet has a mass and also the system has a known age. So it's like, given this kind of age and mass, what do we expect to see? For example, what kind of radius the planet should have? So combining multiple different evolution models, we found like the planet radius should be within a range between 1.2 and 1.55. So later in our retrieval analysis, we have been incorporating the mass ranges and radius ranges as priors to inform our spectral analysis. Okay, so now back to the study of the planet spectrum. So this is a spectrophotometry that we're dealing with. So there are 2 sets of the spectra observed by VRT, the same instrument, by different groups at different epochs. So we can see like the spectra have slightly different fluxes, and it's really likely because they're using different pipelines. So the reduction of the direct imaging is pretty tricky. And also there are like more photometry in the longer wavelengths as open symbols, and they are more consistent with each other. So later in our retrieval analysis, we have basically analyzed the individual spectrum and also combine both spectra together with like offset of the free parameters. So in order to make sure our results is not biased by a given data set. So the specific method we use is atmospheric retrievals. So what retrievals does is like it will parameterize different parts of the atmospheric properties with the goal of getting the best fit of the observed data. So it's like playing the knobs of different parts. So one of the 2 major knobs, one of that is the temperature pressure profile. So that describes the thermal structure of the atmosphere. And the other one at the bottom is the abundance profiles. So that describes like how much of the given elements is at the each kind of layers in the atmospheres. And then the retrieval is basically trying to search for any combinations of all of this kind of 20-ish free parameters in order to fit the data in the Bayesian framework. So it's like the red one, which is the best fit. So this kind of planet has clouds, it's cloudy, and the cloudy retrieval is pretty challenging. But in our recent work, we developed a new retrieval approach, which can help us to deal with this cloudy object. But for today, I will just skip the technical details. The results. So here we have run 9 retrievals for this spectrophotometry. Like the blue with the left 3 columns are like we just focus on one spectrum. The middle 3 is the second one, and the last 3 is both spectra. And within each category, there are 3 columns. So it's basically like we're using different priors, the broad priors, the mass prior from the orbit, or plus a radius prior from the evolution models. And what we see here in top panel is like the atmospheric metallicity of this planet is consistently higher than that of the whole star, indicating that the planet has a metal-enriched atmosphere. So the only one which is consistent with each other, that retrieval basically predict a Mars slack mass for the planet, which is not consistent with the orbit. So making the results honorable. And the bottom panel is a C2O ratio, and we can see like it's kind of hard to draw a conclusion here because the C2O seems to depend on the data we analyze and what the priors we use, and could be by model as well. And our kind of conclusion here is like we found some suggestive evidence also for the silicon clouds and distributed chemistry. So the planet has a pretty cold temperature, like 800 K. So given this, AF-B is the coldest planet with suggestive evidence of the silicon clouds. So how to understand the metal enrichment? So there are 3 scenarios that can explain it. So first of that is a planetesimal bombardment. And this kind of scenario is pretty interesting because the system also has a debris disk. At the currently observed orbit and the mass, the AF-B can dynamically excite the debris disk by one of the discovery paper. And it's possible that the planet has also scattered inward and bombarded the atmosphere of the planet. And in addition, there are also possible processes like planetary mergers and core erosion. So basically, our next step is to expand the analysis that we have done for the AF-B to a larger sample of the image planets in order to study the top panel, like the picture at the top. Try to see if there's a formation kind of transition as a function of the distances. But the long-term kind of vision for this study is if we can combine the image planets which are at the slightly wider orbits versus those at the closer in orbits, like irradiated transiting planets, and try to see whether we can see a similar kind of trend. So do those planets have different kind of compositions? And I'm now basically trying to set the stage for the following talks by Megan and Louis, who will definitely talk about this. And in addition, the things the tricky thing for the transiting planets is there's some strong star-planet interaction, so making that the planet can lose the atmosphere. And Jessica has been working a lot on this, so looking forward to her talk. And in the meanwhile, I also want to introduce a system that I've been studying. So it's the Hot Jupiter Host System Happy 32AB. So what we found is from the high resolution spectroscopic monitoring, we found the planet is losing atmosphere, especially the helium. So this is based on the 10A30 helium line monitoring. Our observation indicate that the helium tidal tails of the planet is huge. It's 50 times the size of the planet. And one of my co-authors, Gumi, is also here. So this is a pretty remarkable exoplanet. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, the future goal is really try to understand all kinds of planet system and their composition and to link them to the formation. So with all of this, I'm happy to stop here and take your questions.
Questions? We have a minute.
On the plot you had from Rome's plot, it seems like the value is much higher than the trend. Can you maybe comment on what that means?
It's possible that, because as I mentioned, we don't know whether the models will systematically over-predict some values. So it's possible that the metallicity of this planet is overestimated from the retrievals. So the important thing is to also run the retrievals for some brown dwarfs for which we can know their metallicity from the host stars and see whether all of them are over-predicted to correct for it. But we also, in the meanwhile, we did see some kind of spectral features for the enhanced metallicity from the, especially given that the K-band flux of the planet is really high, that could mean a higher metallicity.
ZJ, really, really cool stuff. If you go to your violin plots, I was noticing that if you just focus on the red ones, if you add in the radius from the evolution models, the C to O ratio is significantly higher. Right? I was wondering what you're learning from that, either about the evolution models themselves or the planet.
It's getting higher because we are incorporating the mass prior and then the radius prior. So that means the last column here has a pretty tight log G, which is pretty low. So it's possible that there's some degeneracy between log G and C to O ratio, because at least we already see some degeneracy between log G and iron abundance. So probably that means if there any degeneracy, then if we constrain one property, the other will be enhanced. So probably that's what we're seeing here.
Okay, cool, thank you.
I saw another question, but in the meantime, the next speaker is Rich. Okay. So let's thank ZJ again.